Most people think being born again means joining a church, getting baptized, or accepting a doctrine. But Joel Goldsmith discovered something far more profound. Being born again is not an event that happens to you. It is a shift in consciousness that changes everything about how you experience life itself. When you are born again in the true mystical sense, you are not becoming religious. You are awakening from the dream of separation. You are recognizing that the life you thought was yours, filled with struggle and limitation, was never your real life at all. It was a hypnotic state, a collective trance. This awakening does not require you to believe anything new. It requires you to see through what you have always believed. The moment you grasp this, your entire relationship with God, with yourself, and with the world transforms. You stop seeking solutions outside yourself because you realize the kingdom is already within. Joel Goldsmith taught that being born again means dying to the false sense of self. Not the self that breathes and walks, but the self that believes it is separate from God. This false self thinks it must earn love, must fight for survival, must protect itself from a hostile universe. That self is an illusion. When you are born again, you do not gain something new. You lose something old. You lose the belief that you are a limited human being trying to reach God. You awaken to the truth that you have always been the expression of God, living and moving as divine consciousness. This is not theology. This is direct experience. The born-again experience is not about becoming holy. It is about recognizing the holiness that has always been present. It is the shift from, I am trying to be spiritual, to, I am spirit itself, expressing in human form. This realization does not come from books or teachers. It comes from inner stillness and revelation. When you truly understand being born again, you stop praying to God and start praying from God. You realize that the voice within you that seeks truth is already the voice of God seeking to express through you. Prayer becomes communion, not petition. You are not asking an external power to fix your life. You are resting in the awareness of divine presence. This shift changes everything. You stop treating symptoms and start addressing the root cause, which is always a mistaken sense of identity. You stop trying to heal the body, get more money, or fix relationships. Instead, you return to the truth of your being, and from that place all things align naturally without force or struggle. Joel Goldsmith called this dying daily. Every day you die to the belief in separation. Every day you are born again into the awareness of oneness. This is not a one-time conversion. This is a continuous awakening, a moment-by-moment choice to live from your true identity as the presence of God made visible. The secret Joel revealed is this: being born again is not about changing your behavior. It is about changing the consciousness from which your behavior flows. When you try to be good, loving, or spiritual through effort, you are still operating from the false self. But when you rest in your true identity, goodness flows naturally. You do not become born again by reading Scripture, though Scripture may point the way. You do not become born again by attending services, though community may support you. You become born again by a profound inner revelation that you are not, and have never been, separate from the source of all life and love. This revelation usually comes in stillness. It comes when you stop trying to make something happen and simply rest in the presence of what already is. In that sacred silence, the false self dissolves, and you awaken to the truth. You realize you are not a sinner seeking salvation. You are salvation itself, expressing as your unique life. Sarah had been a devoted churchgoer for 20 years. She prayed, served, and followed every rule. Yet she felt empty, always reaching for something she could not grasp. Then she discovered Joel's teachings on being born again. At first, she resisted. It seemed too simple, too radical, but something in his words stirred her soul. One morning, during meditation, it happened. She was not trying to pray or reach God. She was simply sitting in silence. Suddenly, she felt a shift. It was not dramatic or emotional. It was a quiet knowing that she had never been separate from God. The one seeking and the one sought were the same. She laughed and cried at once. From that day, everything changed, though nothing external had shifted. Her problems did not vanish overnight. Her circumstances remained the same, but her relationship to them transformed completely. She no longer felt like a victim needing rescue. She felt like consciousness itself, observing and navigating life from a place of inner peace and authority. Over the following weeks, her chronic anxiety began to fade, not because she fought it, but because she stopped identifying with the anxious self. She recognized anxiety as a thought pattern of the false self, and she chose to rest in her true identity instead. Gradually, the patterns dissolved. Michael was a successful businessman who had everything the world promised would bring happiness, wealth, status, and recognition. Yet he felt hollow inside. He tried therapy, self-help books, and motivational seminars. Nothing touched the emptiness. Then a friend recommended Joel Goldsmith's writings on spiritual rebirth. Michael was skeptical. He thought spirituality was for people who could not make it in the real world. But desperation opened his mind. He began reading and practicing the presence. At first, nothing seemed to happen. He felt foolish sitting in silence, trying to sense a divine presence he was not sure existed. But he persisted. 3 months into the practice, during a business crisis that would have once devastated him, he noticed something extraordinary. He felt no fear. Not because he suppressed it, but because he genuinely saw the situation differently. He was not a vulnerable person facing disaster. He was consciousness itself, observing a temporary challenge with complete calm. The crisis resolved in unexpected ways, but more importantly, Michael had changed. He no longer based his identity on success or failure. He had been born into a new understanding of who he was. His business continued, but now it served his life rather than defining it. He had found the peace that surpasses all understanding. Elena had suffered from a chronic illness for 7 years. She had tried every medical treatment, every alternative therapy, every healing modality. Some things helped temporarily, but nothing lasted. She felt betrayed by her body and abandoned by God. Then she encountered Joel's teaching that true healing comes from a change in consciousness. At first, she was angry. Was he saying her illness was not real? Was this just more blame for the sick? But as she read deeper, she understood. Joel was not denying the appearance of illness. He was pointing to a deeper truth, that our experience of the body is always a reflection of our consciousness, and consciousness can be transformed. Elena began the practice of recognizing her true identity. Instead of affirming, "I am sick," she rested in the awareness, "I am the presence of God," expressing as this life. She did not deny symptoms or refuse treatment, but she stopped identifying as a sick person. She identified as wholeness itself, temporarily experiencing a false sense of limitation. The shift was gradual, not instant. Over 6 months, her symptoms began to improve in ways doctors could not explain. But even more profound was her inner transformation. Whether her body healed or not, she had been born again into a consciousness of peace. She was no longer a victim of disease. She was awareness itself, transcending all physical conditions. Thomas had been seeking spiritual truth for decades. He had studied every religion, every philosophy, every mystical tradition. He had accumulated vast knowledge but no peace. His seeking had become an addiction, a way to avoid the very presence he sought. Then he found Joel's simple message: stop seeking and be. One evening, exhausted from another fruitless search through spiritual texts, Thomas simply gave up. He sat in his chair and did nothing. No technique, no method, no striving. In that moment of complete surrender, he felt it. A presence that had always been there, patiently waiting for him to stop looking elsewhere. He had been born again, not into knowledge, but into knowing. From that moment, Thomas's life became an expression of this presence. He did not become perfect or enlightened in the way he had imagined. He still faced challenges, still made mistakes, but he faced them from a different place. He was no longer a seeker trying to become spiritual. He was spirit itself, expressing as Thomas, learning and growing through human experience. If these transformation stories inspire you to explore your own spiritual rebirth, like this video to help others discover Joel Goldsmith's profound teachings, subscribe for more mystical wisdom that transforms consciousness, and comment which story resonated most deeply with your own journey toward awakening. Now that you understand being born again is a shift in consciousness, Let me share the first complementary practice Joel taught, the practice of the presence. This is not a technique to get something. It is a practice of recognizing what already is. Throughout your day, pause and become aware of the presence of God where you are. You do not need to go to a special place or wait for a special time. Right now, in this moment, the fullness of God is present, not as a distant being watching you, but as the very consciousness through which you are reading these words, thinking these thoughts, breathing this breath. You are not separate from this presence. You are this presence, expressing. Begin with simple pauses. When you wake, before rushing into your day, take 60 seconds to consciously recognize the presence. Not to ask for anything, not to report your problems, but simply to acknowledge, the presence of God is here, as me, living this day. When you eat, pause to recognize this presence nourishing itself through you. When challenges arise, instead of immediately reacting or problem-solving, pause. Return to the awareness of presence. From that place of centered awareness, the right action becomes clear. You are not a limited person facing an overwhelming problem. You are infinite consciousness, temporarily experiencing a solvable challenge. This shift in identity changes everything. The second practice Joel emphasized is meditation without seeking. Most meditation teaches you to achieve something: peace, clarity, enlightenment, healing. But born-again consciousness requires a different approach. You meditate not to get anything, but to rest in what you already are. This is the meditation of being, not becoming. Sit comfortably and close your eyes. Do not try to empty your mind or focus on anything specific. Simply rest in awareness itself. Thoughts will come, and that is natural. You do not fight them or follow them. You simply notice you are the awareness in which thoughts appear and disappear. You are not the thoughts. You are the eternal witness. As you rest in this awareness, something profound happens. The false self, with all its fears and desires, begins to quiet. Not because you suppressed it, but because you stopped feeding it with identification. You recognize it as a pattern of thought, not as your true nature. Your true nature is the silent, spacious awareness in which all experience occurs. Practice this daily, even for 10 minutes. Over time, this awareness begins to permeate your entire day. You start living from awareness rather than from the reactive mind. This is the essence of being born again, shifting from identification with the temporary self to recognition of your eternal nature as consciousness itself. The third practice is what Joel called recognizing the Christ within. This has nothing to do with religious affiliation. The Christ is not a person you worship. It is the divine presence expressing as you. It is your true identity, the offspring of God, the expression of infinite consciousness in individual form. Every time you think of yourself, you have a choice. You can identify as the limited human self, with all its history, wounds, and limitations. Or you can recognize the Christ, the divine presence that animates and sustains your life. This recognition does not deny your humanity. It places your humanity in its proper context as the temporary vehicle for eternal consciousness. When someone attacks you, instead of defending the human self, recognize the Christ in them and in you. The Christ cannot be attacked or diminished. Only the false self feels threatened. When you face lack, instead of identifying as someone without enough, recognize the Christ as infinite supply expressing through your life. The shift in consciousness precedes the shift in experience. This is not positive thinking or affirmation. This is recognition of truth. You are not trying to become the Christ. You are remembering that you have always been the Christ, temporarily forgetting itself in human experience. Being born again is this remembering, this awakening to your true identity as the very presence of God made visible. The fourth practice Joel taught is releasing personal sense. Personal sense is the belief that you are a separate individual, managing your own life through personal power and effort. This sense keeps you trapped in limitation because it denies your true source. Being born again means dying to personal sense and living from God's sense. God's sense recognizes that there is only one life, one mind, one presence, expressing as all. Your life is not separate from God's life. Your mind is not separate from divine mind. When you release personal sense, you stop trying to make things happen through effort. You become a channel through which divine action flows naturally and effortlessly. This does not mean you become passive or stop taking action. It means your action flows from a different source. Instead of the anxious striving of the personal self, your action emerges from inner guidance and peace. You know what to do because you are connected to the source of all wisdom. You move with confidence because you trust the presence acting through you. Practice releasing personal sense throughout your day. When you feel burdened by responsibility, pause and recognize, this is not my personal burden. This is divine life, expressing through this situation. The same intelligence that created the universe is managing this circumstance through me. Feel the shift from personal struggle to divine flow. This is the freedom of being born again. Let us be honest about the challenges. The biggest obstacle to being born again is the ego's resistance to dying. Even when you understand these truths intellectually, the false self fights for survival. It creates doubt, confusion, and distraction. It tells you this is too simple, too good to be true, or that you are not worthy of such transformation. Rebecca experienced this intensely. After her initial awakening, she felt weeks of profound peace. Then suddenly, old patterns returned with force. Anxiety, self-doubt, and fear flooded back. She thought she had failed, that her awakening was not real. But this is the normal pattern. The false self does not die quietly. It reasserts itself, testing your commitment to truth. The key is not to fight these returns of old patterns. Fighting them gives them power and reality. Instead, recognize them as the death throes of a false identity. When anxiety returns, do not say, "I am anxious again." Say, "Anxiety is appearing in consciousness, but I am the awareness observing anxiety, not the anxiety itself." This disidentification weakens the pattern. Over time, with consistent practice, the old patterns lose their grip. Not because you defeated them, but because you stopped feeding them with identification. You cannot force being born again to happen quickly. It is a gradual transformation that deepens with daily practice. Be patient with yourself. Every moment of recognition strengthens your new consciousness. Another common challenge is the temptation to use spiritual truth as a way to get things. People hear about consciousness creating experience and immediately think, "Great, now I can manifest wealth, health, and success." But this is still operating from the false self, just with spiritual tools. Being born again is not about getting a better human experience. It is about transcending the human sense entirely. David fell into this trap. He practiced the presence, but only to improve his business. He meditated, but only to reduce his stress. He affirmed his divine identity, but only to attract a relationship. When these things did not manifest quickly, he became frustrated and bitter. He thought spirituality had failed him, but spirituality had not failed. He had not yet understood its true purpose. Joel taught that we do not use God. We surrender to God. We do not manipulate consciousness to serve the ego. We die to the ego so consciousness can express freely through us. When David finally understood this, he released his agenda. He practiced the presence simply to rest in truth, regardless of outcomes. Paradoxically, this is when his life began to transform naturally. The transformation was not magical or instant. It unfolded over months. But it came from a different source, not from his personal striving. His business improved because he made clearer decisions from inner peace. His health improved because stress no longer dominated his system. Relationships improved because he stopped needing them to complete him. He had been born into a consciousness of sufficiency. A third challenge is the intellectual understanding versus lived experience. Many people study Joel's teachings extensively. They can quote passages, explain concepts, and teach others. But they have not been transformed because the knowledge remains in the head, never dropping into the heart where real change happens. Marina was a spiritual teacher who knew Joel's work inside and out. She gave talks, led workshops, and wrote articles. But privately, she struggled with the same fears and insecurities as everyone else. She thought something was wrong with her. How could she teach what she had not fully embodied? Then she realized her mistake. She was trying to understand her way into transformation. Joel taught that transformation does not come through understanding. It comes through revelation. You can study a menu extensively and know every dish, but you will not be nourished until you eat. Marina stopped studying and started practicing. She spent less time reading and more time in silence, less time teaching and more time listening to the inner voice. Within weeks, something shifted. Her teaching became more authentic and powerful because it now flowed from experience rather than knowledge. She could speak about peace because she was living in peace. She could teach about presence because she was being presence. Her students felt the difference immediately. Being born again is not an intellectual achievement. It is a lived reality that others can sense and feel. The final major challenge is staying awake in a sleeping world. When you begin to live from born-again consciousness, you may feel isolated. Others do not understand your new perspective. They may think you have become strange, impractical, or deluded. The collective consciousness constantly pulls you back toward identification with the false self and material sense. Joel himself faced this. Even as he taught profound truths, he lived in a world that valued material success, social status, and personal achievement. He had to consciously choose, moment by moment, to remain anchored in spiritual consciousness while functioning in the human world. This is the challenge every awakened person faces: being in the world, but not of it. The solution is community and consistent practice. Surround yourself, even virtually, with others who understand this path. Read and listen to teachings that reinforce your new consciousness. Most importantly, establish a daily practice that anchors you in truth before the world's demands begin. Start each day remembering who you are before the world tells you who you should be. When you slip back into old consciousness, and you will, do not despair. Simply notice it and return. Being born again is not a one-time event, but a continuous choosing. Every moment offers the choice. Will you identify with the false self or rest in your true nature? With practice, choosing truth becomes natural, and living from presence becomes your new normal. This is the promise and the process. If these challenge-breaking practices resonate with your journey, like this video to support others navigating their own spiritual obstacles, subscribe for advanced teachings on living born-again consciousness daily, and comment, which challenge are you ready to transform through divine awareness right now? Now let us explore advanced integration. When you have been born again in consciousness, everyday situations become opportunities for practice. Consider relationships. Most people relate from need, seeking completion, validation, or security from others. But born-again consciousness relates from fullness. You do not need anyone to complete you because you are already complete in God. James discovered this with his wife. For years, their marriage was a battlefield of unmet needs and constant disappointment. Each expected the other to provide happiness. After his awakening, James approached relationship entirely differently. He stopped asking, "What can I get?" and started living, "What can I give from my fullness?" His wife felt the shift immediately, even before understanding it. As James stopped needing her to be different, she naturally softened. As he stopped demanding she meet his emotional needs, she became more generous. The relationship transformed not because she changed, but because he was relating from a different consciousness. He was no longer a needy ego seeking from another needy ego. He was presence, relating to presence. This does not mean relationships become perfect or conflict-free. It means conflict is handled differently. When disagreements arise, James no longer defends a personal position. He recognizes the divine presence in both himself and his wife, seeking the truth that serves both. From this consciousness, solutions emerge that personal sense could never find. Love flows naturally when need is absent. Consider work and career through born-again consciousness. Most people work from fear and survival. They believe they must labor to earn money to survive. They see work as a burden, a necessary evil. But when you are born again, work becomes something entirely different. It becomes the avenue through which divine purpose expresses through your unique gifts. Sophia was a corporate executive who hated her job. She felt trapped by financial obligations and golden handcuffs. After her awakening, she did not immediately quit. Instead, she brought a different consciousness to the same job. She recognized that her work was not about earning money. It was about serving as a channel for divine intelligence and creativity in the business world. This shift transformed everything. Tasks that once felt burdensome became interesting challenges. Colleagues she once resented became souls she could serve. She stopped working for the company and started working for the presence, letting it express as excellent work through her. Her performance improved dramatically, but more importantly, her inner state became peaceful and purposeful. Eventually, this new consciousness led to new opportunities, and Sophia transitioned to work that aligned more fully with her gifts. But the external change was secondary. The primary transformation was internal. From working for survival to working as service, from laboring under obligation to expressing divine creativity. Your work, whatever it is, becomes sacred when you bring born-again consciousness to it. Health challenges provide another profound opportunity for living from awakened consciousness. When illness appears, the temptation is to identify as a sick person, to feel victimized by the body. But born-again consciousness recognizes that you are not the body. You are the consciousness animating and experiencing the body. This distinction changes everything about healing. Carlos was diagnosed with a serious illness. Initially, he fell into despair and identification with the disease. But then he remembered Joel's teaching. I am not my body. I am the consciousness in which the body appears. He began treating his physical condition while simultaneously resting in his true identity as consciousness itself, untouched by physical conditions. This did not mean denying symptoms or refusing treatment. It meant not identifying his essential self with the temporary condition. He underwent medical treatment while maintaining inner awareness that no physical condition could touch his true nature. He practiced seeing his body as the presence of God made visible, and illness as a false sense temporarily appearing in consciousness. The outcome was remarkable. His healing progressed faster than medical predictions, but even more significant was his peace throughout the process. Whether his body healed or not, Carlos had discovered something that transcended physical healing. The realization that his true self was eternal, whole, and untouched by any physical condition. This is the ultimate healing that being born again provides, regardless of physical outcomes. Financial challenges test born-again consciousness perhaps more than any other area. The material world constantly reinforces the belief that money is survival, security, and power. But when you are born again, you recognize that your supply is consciousness, not currency. Your source is God, not a job, investment, or person. Linda lost everything in a business failure. Her savings vanished, her home was foreclosed, and she faced bankruptcy. For months she struggled in fear and desperation. Then she encountered Joel's teaching on infinite supply. She began to practice recognizing God as her source, not her bank account. This was not easy. Every bill, every rejection, every lack seemed to prove her wrong. But Linda persisted. She did not deny the appearance of lack. She acknowledged it while simultaneously recognizing a deeper truth. The infinite consciousness that created the universe was her true supply, capable of opening channels she could not imagine. She released her grip on how supply must come and simply rested in the awareness that it would come, because divine consciousness was her source. Over 18 months her situation transformed. Not through lottery or windfall, but through unexpected opportunities, helpful people, and creative solutions that emerged when she stopped trying to force outcomes from limited personal sense. She learned that supply does not come from the world, but through the world, when consciousness is aligned with abundance. Being born again means trusting infinite intelligence over material appearances. You now stand at the threshold of total transformation. Everything you have learned points to one profound truth. Being born again is not a modification of your old life. It is the end of living from the false self and the beginning of living as your true self. This is not a gradual improvement. It is a radical shift in identity, though it may unfold gradually. When you fully embrace this consciousness, you stop asking, "What can I do to make my life better?" and start recognizing, "My life is already the expression of divine perfection, appearing in temporary human form." You stop trying to fix yourself and start resting in the awareness that you have never been broken. The perfection you sought was always your true nature, hidden only by false belief. This does not mean your human experience becomes perfect. You still face challenges, losses, and limitations, but you face them from a different place. You are no longer a vulnerable person trying to survive in a hostile world. You are consciousness itself, exploring and experiencing through human form. Challenges become opportunities for presence to express wisdom, love, and creative solutions. The greatest gift of being born again is freedom. Not freedom from circumstances, but freedom in circumstances. You are no longer enslaved by conditions because you recognize that conditions are temporary appearances in eternal consciousness. Your peace does not depend on things being a certain way. Your joy is not conditional on success or approval. You have found the kingdom within, and nothing external can give it or take it away. As you continue this journey, you will notice something remarkable. Being born again is not a destination you reach. It is a deepening awareness that continues to expand. Each day brings new opportunities to die to the false self and awaken more fully to your true nature. This is what Joel meant by dying daily. You never graduate from this practice. You simply go deeper. Some days the awareness will be strong and clear. You will move through your day in perfect peace, seeing divine presence everywhere, handling challenges with grace. Other days you will forget. Old patterns will reassert themselves. You will find yourself lost in worry, fear, or desire. This is normal. This is the human experience of progressive awakening. The key is not to judge these fluctuations. When you notice you have forgotten, simply remember. When you catch yourself identifying with the false self, gently return to truth. No guilt, no shame, no sense of failure. Just a simple return to what is true. This returning is the practice. This remembering is the path. Over time, the returns become more frequent, the remembering more natural. Eventually, living from born-again consciousness becomes your default state. Not through effort or discipline, but through the natural result of continuous practice. You have rewired your consciousness. You have established new patterns of identification. You have become what you always were, but now you know it, live it, and express it consciously. Let me share the ultimate secret Joel revealed about being born again. It is not your achievement. You cannot make yourself be born again through effort or discipline. The one who tries to be born again is the very false self that must die. All you can do is surrender, be still, and let the presence that has always been there reveal itself. This is why striving fails. The ego cannot transcend the ego. Personal effort cannot overcome personal sense. Your role is not to create transformation, but to stop blocking it. Stop identifying with thoughts. Stop believing in separation. Stop trying to become what you already are. Just stop, be still, and let the truth be revealed. In that stillness, something happens. Not through your doing, but through your non-doing. The presence that has always been there, patiently waiting, steps forward. You recognize it not as something new, but as what has always been most intimately you. Closer than breath, nearer than hands and feet. The very consciousness through which you read these words right now. This recognition is being born again. Not a future event, but a present reality. Not something you achieve, but something you accept. You are already born again. You are already the Christ. You are already divine consciousness expressing as individual form. The only question is, will you recognize it? Will you accept it? Will you live from it? This is your choice, moment by moment, now and forever. You have journeyed through the deepest secret of existence. Being born again is the most radical transformation available to human consciousness. It is the shift from believing you are a separate mortal seeking God to recognizing you are God consciousness itself, temporarily expressing in human form. This changes absolutely everything. From this moment forward, you have a choice. You can return to old consciousness, living from the false self with all its fears and limitations. Or you can choose day by day, moment by moment, to live from your true identity. You can practice the presence, release personal sense, and rest in the awareness that you are consciousness itself, experiencing life through this beautiful, temporary human form. The world needs people who have been born again in this true sense. Not religious converts, but awakened beings who live from presence, peace, and divine awareness. You do not need to announce your transformation or convince anyone else. Your consciousness will speak through how you live, love, and respond to life's challenges. You will become a light in the darkness, not through preaching, but through being. Remember, this is not a journey you take alone. The same presence awakening in you is awakening in countless others around the world. You are part of a global shift in consciousness, though you may never meet most of your fellow travelers. Trust the process, be patient with yourself, and keep returning to truth. You are born again, now and always, in consciousness eternal. If your understanding has been transformed by these Joel Goldsmith revelations on being truly born again, like this video to help others awaken to their true divine identity. Subscribe for more mystical teachings that transcend religion into direct experience. And comment, "I am born again in consciousness," to affirm your commitment to living from your eternal true self.